Hello, BookTube. It's, as I mentioned, Tuesday, and for this little corner of BookTube, that means tags, Tag Tuesday. I did an alphabet tag by Jim at Jim's Books and Reading and Stuff, the S tag. But last time, when I did the R tag, a lot of you got in touch to say that I had not done the Q tag. And I knew that that had to be wrong. I knew that I did. I remember doing it. I remember recording that video. And I went back, sure enough, it's not there. You're right. Of course, you're right. But I never did publish that video. And then I tried to figure out why. I don't keep my videos. I don't dote over them. I don't have any idea why anybody does. So the video that I had filmed for that Q tag is already gone. So I couldn't look at it and maybe repost it. So I had to figure out why hadn't I posted it. I posted everything else that day, but I didn't post that. And I figured out the reason. There's one particular question on here that was the reason why I didn't post the Q tag. Because at one point in the tag, I got to an annotation that Jim made on his original tag that made me so angry, not at Jim, but it made me so angry that in my recording of that tag, that anger took the form of a 50-minute rant. So not the whole tag. The tag took even longer. Just that rant was 50 minutes, and that I remember distinctly now. That when I was done, I decided, no, you can't upload that. Do it again. Just remake the tag. And then I forgot to remake it. So I'm doing the Q tag today. And forearmed is forewarned. I now know the stumbling block, and I'm determined not to stumble over it again. And also, I only have about 10 minutes to do this tag. I intentionally let it abut against a thing that I have to do so that I would have a time limit, just in case I'm tempted to ignore my own advice. So we're going to go through the Q tag. I'll leave a link to Jim's original. The first prompt is Q is for quick. What is a quick read for you? A book you read in 1 or 2 sittings. This isn't really fair. I read very, very fast, an average of 150 pages an hour, and I read nonstop. So, 1 or 2 sittings, well, what's a sitting? I read for 8 solid contiguous hours every night. I read for long stretches, 2 or 3 hour stretches at a time every day. So a book you read in 1 or 2 sittings is any book. That's virtually every book. Unless the book is either very, very long, or unless it's so dense that I need to just pick over it like over broken ground. So all of them, I'm going to say, so it's not very helpful. The next prompt is Q is for question. You can ask me a question in the comments below. I answer every comment. I've clearly missed my window for this, but I love it. I love how interactive it is. Then what is your favorite question word? For me, it's how, more than any other. It's the thing I always, in any process or confronted with any object, that's the thing I always want to know first. Then Q is for quantity and quality. Would you rather read 10 okay books a month or 1 very good book? I would rather the quantity over the quality, if only because that I would have more to read. I love the act of reading, and I love sniffing around in books for what's good and maybe what could be better. So the idea of having only 1 book to read in a month, that's a little hard. I'm going to go with quantity here. Then Q is for queer. Do you have a favorite queer author? And in the original tag, Jim writes, Q is for queer, asterisk. See the note down below. And his note down below is long and careful and cringing and desperate not to be canceled. And it's not because of Jim, it's because of the world we live in. And that is what occasioned the 55-minute rant. That you have to preemptively apologize and abase yourself to even hint at using this kind of word. Because there are nebulous sensorial forces hovering around all of us just watching for us to step out of line. That occasioned a long rant, and I'm going to skip that rant. I've done that rant on this channel many, many times. If I want to use the word gay as a synonym for all of queer, including two-spirit and tree-spirit, I will do that. And you are not yet in a position where you can legally or physically stop me from doing that, okay? So, but I'm not going to go down that route. And in terms of my favorite queer author, I don't know and I don't care. Who someone sleeps with has absolutely no impact whatsoever on what they write. And if it does, what they write is bad. I don't even need to read it to know that. I don't care at all. I'm not going to do even a cursory Facebook search to find out. Unlike most avid readers in the 21st century who do that Facebook search first before they decide whether or not they even will give the book a try. I don't do it at all, and I don't care about it at all. So we'll just move on. Q is for quiet. Do you need quiet to read? No. No, I do not. When I lock into a relationship with a book, so when I'm not skimming, when I've decided I'm going to hunker down and read this thing, which happens several times every day, I form an isolinear connection with that book that almost nothing can intrude on. Almost nothing. I've been reading on a bench and had a multi-ton construction equipment break loose from its scaffolding and fall directly across the street and strike pavement so that there's a mini earthquake. And I am told I did not notice. I have had many, many occasions where I will bring a book with me to a train station or an airport waiting room to wait for a friend to fly in or drive in or whatever. And I will get so caught up in the book that the friends will arrive, they'll call my name, they'll walk over to me. Sometimes they sit down next to me just to see how long it's going to take me to notice that they're there. Usually what they have to do is actually pass a hand between me and the book in order. I have lost track of how many times that has happened. So no, I do not need quiet to read. Q is for Quran. Have you read the Quran? I realize that Jim is posing these tags to everyone, not just to me. If he were posing this just to me, he would not dare to ask Steve a have you read question, much less a have you read question about one of the most important literary texts in the history of the world. I have, of course, read the Quran. Yes, not in the original, but in a few different English language translations many times. Then Q is for Quack. Why does Pei have so many ducks in his videos? Jim helpfully provides a link to one of Pei's videos, but I don't think it's going to help. It's a mystery. You're not going to be able to figure out the answer. I certainly don't know the answer. Then Q is for Queensland, Qatar, Quito, and Quebec. Have you read a book from any of these places or anywhere beginning with Q? I'm sure that I have. I have no idea if I have, but I'm sure that I have. Then Q is for Quaker. Has there been a Quaker protagonist or character in any of your reading? I'm sure that there has, but in order for me to notice, it would have to be prominent and it would have to be important in the plot. And I haven't noticed that in anything recently, not in a long time. Then Q is for quote. Can you share some quotes about reading? Well, it just so happens that the other day at the Brattle, I got this. I got a new edition of the Oxford Dictionary of Literary Quotations. And there's a whole section in here on reading. Let's see if we can find a couple of good ones. Well, there's Margaret Atwood. Not an author I like to read, but she does a lot of reading. She says the act of reading is like reading a text is like playing music and listening to it at the same time. I kind of like that. That's actually really good. Like playing music and listening to it at the same time. Woodrow Wilson, notorious among U.S. presidents for... he's known among U.S. presidents for being an intellectual. He was actually a dolt. And this quote makes it clear. I would never read a book if it were possible to talk for half an hour with the man who wrote it. That's great. That's just the kind of dolt you want leading the country. And then there's Goethe, the great Goethe, who has this quote translated into English. There are three kinds of readers. One who enjoys without judging, a third who judges without enjoying, and another in the middle who judges while enjoying and enjoys while judging. The last class truly reproduces a work of art anew. Its members are not numerous. I tend to agree with that. So there are some quotes on reading from a new source that I'm carefully going through. Let's see here. Q is for Quill. Have you had any writings published? Yes. Yes, I have. I know that most people would despise book reviewing, but it is its own kind of writing. It has its own kind of yardstick of worth, of merit. It can be both good and bad. It is not just a parasitical growth on the book that it's reviewing. And I have had many, 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 many book reviews published in my lifetime. Many such reviews. And I've also had one short story published in an Australian literary journal called The Lifted Brow. A long time ago, about 15 years ago, more than that maybe, I had a short story published in The Lifted Brow about a young drug addict in Prague who is in love with the moon. As far as I know, that is the only published fiction of mine that has ever occurred. Will that stay true throughout the course of 2021? Stay tuned. And don't bother looking for that issue of Lifted Brow. From what I'm told, It's very collectible. Probably not because of me, but probably because of the intense lineup of literary luminaries who I'm sharing the table of contents with. Kind of amazing. Then Q is for quiz, question, and quilp. Quilp featured in which Dickens novel? Couldn't tell you. Then the bonus prompts, which you must do. Q is for queen. Do you have a favorite book about a queen or even about the queen? Queen Elizabeth II of England. When it comes to Queen Elizabeth II, it would be Ben Pimlott's book, The Queen, which is amazing. I've read every book, every major biography of Queen Elizabeth II. I've read most of the major appearances that she's had in fiction. And Ben Pimlott's book just beats them all. It's amazingly, amazingly good. Then Q is for Quetzal. Have you ever seen a Quetzal? It's a very brightly plumaged bird. I have. I have seen them. It's impossible to miss them once they're in motion. Even in the bright against the bright background of the forest where they live, it's impossible to miss them because the adult tail feather is an iridescent, almost neon green. So when they're in flight, you can't miss them. Then Q is for quadruped, a chance to show your four-legged pet. That would be Frida Bean, who is not accepting calls at the moment because it's a little bit dreary outside. It's a little bit on the rainy side. And rain is her mortal enemy. She hates the rain. So she's not her usual exuberant self. And then finally, Q is for quarrel. Have you ever argued about a book? I have, many, many times. For a long time, it was my custom here at Hyde Cottage and elsewhere to have regular literary soirees, like Lady Carberry in The Way We Live Now. I would have regular literary soirees where I'd invite a group of literary people, agents, editors, publicists, authors, reviewers, over here once a month, thereabouts. And oftentimes those people were helping. We were all working together to put out Open Letters Monthly, but oftentimes other people as well, just depending on whose schedules were available. COVID completely nixed that. COVID made that impossible, to have a room full of literary people and just listen to the symphony of them talking. That is always the thing I have loved so, so much. And long before I did that, there was a back room in a particular used bookstore in Boston where on the lunch hour people would congregate. Literary people would congregate there. And I was a mere stripling, and I was allowed to congregate with them. And that was wonderful. That was also the music of listening to that sort of thing. I would hope that someday that will come back. I have no idea. My country is currently not doing all that well against the ravages of COVID-19 and the Delta variant, largely because 150 million people in this country are insane. 150 million adults in this country are part of a charismatic death cult. And openly say, when you interview them at their Klan rallies, I would rather die of COVID than get the vaccine that is free and totally effective. And yet when your follow-up question is, are you in a death cult, then they'll say, no, what are you talking about? No, I'd just rather die for my beliefs. Because of that, progress has been completely... If that didn't exist, this country would be completely vaccinated. But it isn't, and it's not ever going to be. And so I don't know if those literary events will ever happen again. But at those events, often arguments broke out about books. Often they did. Including arguments about the books written by people who were in those gatherings. Some of them would take the feeble response of saying, well, I wrote the book, so I'm right about it. When that isn't true. Once you release, as Horace tells us, once you release your little book out into the world, anybody can pronounce on it. You don't have any kind of final word. I wish somebody would tell that to J.K. Rowling. If I read her Harry Potter books and I say that Dumbledore is not gay, I'm as right as she is. She can't retroactively add something to those books. Now, if you wanted him to be gay, you could have written him that way, and you didn't. So you can say that he is, and a lot of your fans will believe it, but I care about what the book says, not what you say. And that often, a variation on that line often had to come up at meetings like that. I care about what the book says, not you say. You say you didn't write a misogynistic novel. Well, let's pull it off the shelf, shall we? Let's let it speak for itself. And I miss that. I do. I miss the fun parts. I miss the argumentative parts. I miss it all. So I'm hoping for it again. But anyway, that is the Q tag. You'll notice I controlled myself. So this was done in a reasonable fashion. So I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.